nuance. All you see is a massive number, $69 million, and that that almost overwhelming collage of work. That's it. So all of our ideas of decoloniality of what we want to do through metaverse in the world, they sort of get lost in that noise. And we found that it's it's been a sort of a little anticlimactic in that sense, right? I mean, we are happy about the access that it opened up, about the doors that it kicked open for us, because we wouldn't have had many of the relationships which we now like cherish, seriously cherish. I mean, some of them are the biggest artists in the world, which is what we always wanted to do. Some of them are relationships with creatives, with entrepreneurs that we have now begun to enjoy working with, would not have happened without the Beeple piece. But on the other hand, it also opened up, it signaled something that did not and that never will sort of represent who we are. It signaled that we might be these hype masters of the NFT space. And I mean, I'm sure you among many people were surprised at, at what we spoke about at NFT NYC, right? I mean, these don't look like the kind of people that would speak about Walter Mignolo or Alfredo Jar. I mean, someone who's inspired by them doesn't necessarily go and spend $69 million on a work of art. So we're sort of trying to counterbalance that narrative, which we sort of created for ourselves inadvertently.
Do you feel like some of the skepticism when the Beeple incident first occurred may have had to do something with the fact that your identities weren't revealed right away? And when the identities were revealed, we're talking about pseudonyms. And I feel like in the crypto world, people are comfortable with the pseudonyms and the screen names. But in the legacy art world, that could be confusing. Could you maybe talk about the significance of your pseudonym and why you use it?
Sure, Craig. I mean, that was deliberate. It was part of it. And I don't think the conventional art world is necessarily uncomfortable with pseudonyms, because many of the biggest sales are anonymous, right? I mean, say, I mean, a mystery buyer bought this piece for 10 million or 20 or whatever. So it's not uncommon that way. It's funnily enough, anonymity people are okay with. Pseudonymity, not so much, in spite of it being like a very widespread phenomenon. I mean, think about it for a second. Every time you log into a social network or you sign up for a game on Xbox or PS4 or whatever, the first thing you do is to create an avatar, right? But the problem is when you do it in crypto, it is either infantilized or vilified. So we sort of wanted to break that mold a little bit and to give people a sense that pseudonymity is not necessarily a cover or something that you're hiding behind, because it doesn't have to be. I mean, our own pseudonyms were never airtight, were never meant to be. Anybody with an internet connection would have doxed us and did eventually. Eh, because we work on the same things that Metakovan and Twobadour work on the same things that Anand and Vignesh did, for instance. So it was easy, but it was more a sort of a commentary on the power of pseudonyms. I mean, for me personally, and even for Metakovan, what pseudonyms did was to give us a non-judgmental runway into this new world of NFTs, which is unheard of, right? When as Twobadour, I was able to exist for 6 months, and it was thrilling, right? I couldn't bring any baggage, any of my previous so-called accomplishments or credentials into this new space. But at the same, and I had to live off of my current talents. I mean, meager as they might be. But on the other hand, there was no baggage. There was no point of reference for the people that were interacting with me, except for that one conversation they were having with me, right? Which I thought was thrilling, which was honest, which was refreshing, and that runway did so much to sort of infuse my own sense of infuse me with a sense of self-worth, which I might not have had before, and also a confidence in what I could do in this new space. So in that way, I think pseudonyms have been incredibly helpful to us personally, and I think will be for a lot of people of color or people that are not entirely comfortable in their own skin. So, to cut a long story short, yes, I do think there is a lot of stigma attached to pseudonymity in the world, which might have been one of the reasons for the skepticism. But the reason we went with it is because of our own empirical experience with pseudonymity.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about Beeple. I mean, even before the first 5,000 days, you guys had launched a fund called B20, which was set up to purchase Beeple works. What is it about Beeple's artwork that attracted you and Metakovan?
Well, a correction, Craig. B20 is not a fund to purchase people's artworks. It's a very simple project in fractionalized ownership. This was in December 2020, and Metakovan had this idea of buying out an entire collection from a Beeple drop. It's frankly a ridiculous notion because to be able to acquire 20 pieces over 2 days on an open auction is unheard of. It's never been done before, and it will never happen again because the place is simply too big now. But we managed to do it, and we did it because we had a clear idea of what we wanted to do with art. That's the crux of the whole experiment, right? I mean, the only way people know to interact with art is to one, to flip it for a higher price, and two is to sort of lock it up somewhere. The third option, which we wanted to explore, was to share ownership of a work of art and to display it in public, which is how it was done prehistorically almost. So what we did with these 20 editions of the Beeple 20, as it was called, was to build museums for it in the metaverse across CryptoVoxels and Sandbox and Somnium Space and Decentraland. I mean, Sandbox was an open then, but the other three places. We installed these 20 works of art in them. We bundled the whole thing and we fractionalized the ownership of this entire bundle into these B20 tokens. So it's very simple. It's almost like owning a piece of the MoMA as you walk into it, right? So you don't own a particular work of art, but you own a piece of the entire experience. That's what the B20 token and the project represent.
I think I got the order backwards. I in my mind, the B20 tokens were launched to fund the acquisition, but the B20 tokens were launched post-acquisition to provide fractionalized ownership to whoever had interest in the collection. Does that sound right?
The collection and the whole experience, basically. The B20 bundle also includes a sort of an original video, a soundscape by Blau at that point, who also helped perform it. It includes the architectural designs of those museums. It includes the actual builds themselves, and it includes also, the actual 20 pieces. So it's not just the 20 works of art, which were, which we acquired for about $2.2 million, but also all of these other assets which make up the experience, for which we spent an additional $500,000.
The Beeple's first 5,000 days, in the weeks following the sale, there were those who combed through all 5,000 images and made note of a number of works that were, just say, troubling. And some were considered misogynistic. Some said there were pieces that were racist. How would you respond to those critics?
It's interesting, right? I mean, I have had several conversations about this, but we always looked at it from two perspectives. One, it might feel counterintuitive, but the fact is, what appealed to us most about Beeple, the artist, was Beeple, the person. His almost spiritual level of consistency to creating art every day for art's sake, right? I mean, nobody has that kind of consistency, that kind of commitment. I mean, people. I myself have skipped showering over the course of 5 years, at least a couple of times, right? There is nothing any of us do which happens every day, right? And so this we felt was a powerful metaphor for a digital generation, which said, you can start anywhere, you can get better at something. like gradually and very visibly better at something, and you hit the end of the rainbow, whether it's at the end of a year or 5 or 13. Right? So that's we thought that was an amazing metaphor, and that's what appealed to us most about Beeple, the fact that he put himself out there, his progress or lack thereof, every day for people to see, and he did get better visibly as an artist. So that's what appealed to us. To address the elephant in the room, the individual pictures themselves. I've felt two things about it. One, it's not my business to censor what an artist puts out, but two, I had this feeling that people is more a conduit for the social and cultural excesses of his times, rather than an advocate of what those images represent. Yes, there is misogyny in it. There is, an excess. There is hyperbole in it. But he's more, a cartoonist that reflects the influences around him on a daily basis, rather than someone who, actually sort of advocates for misogyny. Because I've met the man, and he's not a misogynist. It doesn't feel like it.
Sure. And I believe he was at Dreamverse, right?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He
And
was.
so, yeah, can you kind of describe what Dreamverse is and how that event came off this year?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it again, we never fully finished thinking about how we could experience NFTs, right? I mean, this current boom in the space that we're experiencing is all about collecting or acquiring NFTs. I think the real boom will happen when people figure out how to experience and enjoy their NFTs. And Dreamverse is one of those early. And B20 was one such experiment. And Dreamverse is a very real sort of physical experiment in experiencing NFTs, because physical art is not digital art, obviously, but digital art can be expressed in physical spaces, and it was so exciting to be able to do that, to be able to experiment with it at Dreamverse. So Dreamverse is basically, the way we look at it is what happens when this abstract virtual idea of NFTs makes landfall. And it did make landfall in New York. It had two aspects to it. One was the Dreamverse Gallery, which consisted of works from 162 artists, NFT artists. That itself was incredible to me, because it was purely based on the relationship that we were able to build with artists. It was purely based on artists themselves being comfortable with the vibe of Metaverse, with what we represent in the space, and we are immensely grateful that they said yes. All 162 of them, and out of them, 40 of the artists are from Timepieces, the initiative by the Time magazine, the Time group, and the latter half of Dreamverse was an EDM party, because we just wanted to create a collective experience, basically, through the gallery as well. I mean, one of the things with digital art is that, yes, you can look at it on your phone, but the experience is different when you're looking at it on, say, a 10-foot screen with 20 others, right? So that's what that sort of moment of magic and serendipity is what we wanted to create. The Dreamverse Gallery also, like we spoke about a little earlier, had this live drawing performance by the Dada Art Collective. It had a live soundscape by the Pun Collective from the south of India, and a whole bunch of artists that are not in the limelight currently, or are not that famous, because we left the curation to 10 artists instead of trying to do it ourselves. That was one of my earlier concerns. I did not want to curate anything. My sensibilities are very limited, so I wouldn't want to do that. So we reached out to 10 of the OG NFT artists, like Sparrow, Josie Bellini, Skeeny, Metageist, and a few others, and they did the curation. They chose 10 artists that they admired in the space, that they thought were interesting or promising, which led to this incredible variance in the kind of artists that we were able to showcase at Dreamverse. So I'm very proud of the gallery itself.